take us away. And
Yes.
and we have Alex here as our
Sorry, I must
facilitator.
turn all my sound
Let me just confirm that this live stream is functioning correctly,
Okay.
and hopefully that should be good to go. Yes, we are currently live and it is functioning correctly.
Okay, great.
Great.
So now we can proceed.
Okay. So I will share my screen. And there we go. And now you can see both on screen and usually in front of you the latest draft of the policy. And I have, this is based on conversations that you had at your last meeting, and then I met with my colleagues in Legislative Council, and we went through and made the proposed changes that you see. And so the first one that is obvious and highlight is that this would say the Vermont General Assembly policy, and the idea being that this is the policy that would be adopted by the House and by the Senate and potentially by the Joint Legislative Management Committee to apply to the staff who are not covered by the House or the Senate. And then it would be a unified policy again for the whole legislature.
Great.
So I know there had been a question that came up by email about whether this should say the House, but I think it's preferable to say the General Assembly so that you have one policy.
Assuming that they're going to move forward.
Exactly, and they are planning a meeting for next week. So I think it'll be great because they will have what you have at that point basically finished working on to do. I'm not sure if it makes sense for you for the House to adopt a new policy in the last week or two of the session anyway. That would be then a different policy than what the Senate has. So it may be something that's ready to go for the next biennium.
Oh, so we would still then, it's something, any issues that came up would still be under the old policy until under the 20.
We can talk about it. I think it's, otherwise you will have a different policy than what the Senate has.
Yeah.
So what if they agree to this though?
If they were to agree in the next couple of weeks and adopt, I suppose we could do that and we could continue to work with them on their procedures.
I think that would be the ideal situation, because
Yes.
we're waiting till we get back, and then we get back, and it's, takes a while to like reboot everything.
Right, I think it will may depend on whether they like what you've done or whether they have significant changes they want to make that then goes back and forth.
Senator Hardy's been involved.
Yes,
Right.
right.
She's been here,
Yeah.
so.
Exactly, so I think that's been helpful.
Yes, we hope they will just like what we've done. And
Yes, and I did not send this to her, but I can send it to her when we're done here. So it would be then the policy, the General Assembly. So we have replaced references to just the House with General Assembly, and then added back in some of the references that we had potentially taken out before, referring to the Senate's similar panel that they have adopted. And then we didn't feel it was necessary to say that it has been adopted by the staff, House and Senate panels, because that's not, well, I guess it says the Senate and the House panels. The Senate has to adopt it by rule for the whole chamber. You, for your House rules, adopt it on behalf of the chamber. But we'll just have you do that. It doesn't need to say it in order to be in effect. It just is the policy. That's functionally how we adopt it. So then it continues with language, most of which has not changed, just adding back in the senators and staff who work for the General Assembly, not just the House. Then we get into the definition and examples. And so this had been one of the things I think that we had talked about at a previous meeting, that sexual harassment in the third sentence means unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and we decided to take out the verbal or physical because there were so many different forms it could take, and we've addressed that later. So just other conduct of a sexual nature when, and then one or more of those three conditions is met. And then here's the language that we're trying for you. Sexual harassment may take many forms, including verbal, physical, auditory, or visual, or a combination thereof, and may be communicated by any means. I'm trying to get fairly broad in what it might look like and capture the electronic or in person or any other form. Are you ready to keep moving? I'm realizing I am not scrolling, so we'll look through this version instead. Then a couple of small changes on page 2 to the examples of sexual harassment. And one of those is in the touching or grabbing any part of a person's body after that person has indicated or it is known, we added, or should be known that the physical contact is unwelcome. So it's a little bit less subjective whether a reasonable person would believe that the contact was unwelcome based on the indication or just other cues that should suggest that contact would not be welcome. Couple of bullets further down, we had taken out the continuing to write and just put writing sexually suggestive notes, letters, etc. Or, and again, taking out continuing to, but or verbally engaging in a sexually suggestive manner. So it doesn't have to be continual. I think that was something the committee had, or panel had noted in an earlier meeting. Is why are we requiring this to be continual? That is it for the examples. And then we get to just a few provisions in the reporting and responding section. First, in contacting the appropriate panel, we decided to put in a few addenda. So instead of, and we'll get to it at the back, but addendum A is that nice jurisdiction of the panels chart that was in your prior prior policy, or the one that's currently in effect, and I just updated the names of the offices that are affected. So that's where it says a person may contact any member of the panel with jurisdiction over a regulated individual, and then referencing that addendum, whom they believe may have engaged in sexual harassment. And further down in that same paragraph, each panel has a legal obligation to ensure that the General Assembly is and we talked about changing it from working environment, professional working environment, to work environment. We took out the professional because it seems unnecessary. Also, sexual harassment shouldn't occur in any work environment. So just a work environment free from sexual harassment. In the contact a supervisor section, we clarified that it's an employee of the General Assembly who may contact their supervisor. Although I'm realizing as I say that in the addendum that we also included with the names and contact information, we listed the speaker as a house supervisor. So maybe we need to rethink. I don't think that necessarily well, I suppose for the clerk, the speaker is the supervisor. So I think I'll go back to, I think it really makes sense from a supervisor standpoint. As legislators, you don't have supervisors per se, employees do. So an employee can contact the employee's supervisor regarding any contact that the employee believes may be a violation, and then that same change from a professional working environment to a work environment. And then that same change again about the professional working environment to work environment under contacting the Office of Legislative Human Resources. There were no changes on that page 4 about the potential penalties. Although, as I say that, I will take another look at this after I think we had talked about this in the context of the procedures, and I didn't think about it again in the context of the policy itself, but just what the Rules Committee needs to do versus what the panel can do. And I did check in with the clerk after our conversation at the last meeting. The panel can bring a resolution directly to the House. It does not need to go through the Rules Committee. So that had been, I think, something that we were wrestling with is did it need to go through the Rules Committee? And the answer is it does not. So we can update that. And then finally on page 5, this is for minors, this is for interns, staff, etc., that the Sergeant at Arms would provide information about the contact information for all interns, staff, and volunteers to the pro tem or speaker as appropriate. So again, making this a policy for the whole General Assembly. The training and information, it's the pro tem, the speaker, and the chairs of the panels, who must ensure that members, regulated individuals, receive training. And then under the list of other resources, the names and contact information, this is the facilitators first, if any, are included in an addendum to the policy. Right now, that addendum is blank, but has.
So I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So it says, under other resources, that if somebody may contact one of the facilitators for the purpose of providing information on a confidential basis without initiating either of the informal or formal panel processes. Are the facilitators required to report to the panel or no?
No.
No. And so our legal obligation, say to, like, I remember, I think Damien said at one point, even if somebody doesn't want to pursue any action against a regulated individual, we may be required to do something anyway in order to provide a safe working environment for the whole body. But these people, the facilitators, do not have that.
That's right.
Okay.
So somebody could go to a facilitator and the facilitator knows that this really is something that should come before the panel, but the person coming to the facilitator does not want it to come to the panel. The facilitator is not bound to tell.
Right, because the panel is not the only way to address the issue.
Okay.
So, and so the role of facilitator, they do not have the same kind of supervisory or quasi-supervisory role.
They're just more like, I need to talk to somebody.
Exactly, there I need to talk to somebody who
I don't
knows.
want to talk to
who
members of the
knows more.
panel because I don't want this to go anywhere.
Okay.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I don't know if I want to do anything, but I want to talk to somebody. I want to know what my options are
Okay.
without setting something in motion.
So when and we'll talk about, like, have some couple suggestions about somebody, we would go to those people and say, would you be willing to do this? You're not required to do anything except be a listener.
To serve as a facilitator?
Okay.
Yes, I think you would approach the person you are interested in and say, you know, we're looking at creating these new roles. Is that something you'd be willing to do? You know, I would offer myself or members of my staff to talk to the potential facilitators about the policy, just so that they understand what their role
That would be
is.
good.
And I think, you know, Katie is on here. Katie serves as a facilitator in our office, in the Office of Legislative Counsel. She and Damien have both worked in that role for quite a while. And so I think we'd have some ideas about what the
So would we set
facilitator
up,
should
like,
expect.
a formal meeting, or we just have them come and talk to one of you?
I think you just have them come talk to one of us.
Okay. Right, good.
All right, and then finally, we have the list of the other places where somebody can make a complaint. And so when that's the EEOC, the Human Rights Commission, the Attorney General's Office, the State Ethics Commission, and it just updates the language to say you're not actually filing a charge with them, you would make a complaint to one of them. That's generally, I think at least one of them may, in their own words, use the term file a charge, but in our case, it's really just making it start. The process would start by making a complaint. And then we have this new addendum A, which has we included some of the language from the existing policy about jurisdiction, and then put it in that useful chart. Addendum B is names and contact information. So we've put in the names and email addresses for the members of this House panel, the Senate panel, and then the House and Senate supervisors and Office of Legislative Human Resources. And then blank on the facilitators, and it's a may on facilitators. So if you don't have anybody who's a facilitator,
Well,
you don't have to
we
put
have
their name.
we have some
That's great.
suggestions. Shall I let you know
Yes.
who they are? I mean, not everybody is here, but I don't.
I think you
everybody-
may want to talk to, if you haven't talked to the
Yeah, we haven't
potential
talked to them.
facilitators yet.
Yeah, right.
I can
We're
certainly-
volunteering you.
I can talk to, I'll talk to them.
Okay, great. And I'll talk to John.
Okay.
Okay, great. And we'll let you know. Great, there. It doesn't, does it say anywhere, I know in our other policy it said something, if there's a joint meeting, joint hearing, that in alternate years, the chair of the Senate
Did
panel. is the
not put
chair.
that in. It seemed It seems, for one thing, it seems clunky.
Yeah.
And maybe unnecessarily detailed for the
Yeah.
policy, but I
It
defer
could
to
be
you.
decided at the moment.
Right, I
Okay.
think that,
Okay, fine. Yep.
exactly. If we put that in, share shall flip a coin to determine.
Yeah. Okay, all right, great.
So I do just want to look at, again, at that and I can get back to you, that one section about the potential penalties that, apologize, I did not, after talking to the clerk, I did not remember that we had this in the
Where-
policy as well. Is the potential penalties on page 4 for engaging in sexual harassment.
Uh-huh.
And it talks about, there are certain things that may, I'm looking specifically at, maybe we're okay. Let's see, in A, if the regulated individual is a representative, action may include counseling or training, removal from a committee or committee leadership, suspension or expulsion. Panel shall impose or recommend, okay, pursuant to applicable policies and the House rules. I think that works. There, if it's the House clerk, that you would need to go through the House Rules Committee because you don't have jurisdiction yourselves over the House clerk. All right, so I actually think that now that I'm re-looking at it, I think we're okay.
And so in order to, remind me again, if we need to adopt this policy, if we're going to get it adopted before the end of the session, what needs to happen? Does it need to go through the Rules Committee? Does it need to?
No, based on the House rules, which I will just pull up, but I believe you, the panel, can adopt the policy.
We just adopt it, and then do we communicate that to the?
Yes,
So we would say the House panel and the Senate panel have met and agreed on a joint policy, and we then communicate that to the speaker and to the pro tem. What's the?
so it's different in the House and Senate. In the House, your rules say, just get there. Maybe I will just put this up and we can look at the rules together. Nope, still seeing that. Okay, now let's take that down. Oh, I didn't do that right. Maybe I just confused myself. Okay, oh no, I think it is. All right, so here we are in the House rules. And this is Rule 90C. Just back to the top for a second. Yes, Rule 90C, in case anybody wants to look on their own. And so it requires, as you know, the Rules Committee to appoint, you elect a chair. So in number 4, which goes from page 23 to 24, so it's a little hard to tell, but the panel shall elect a chair, adopt procedures to conduct its business. So those are the procedures we've been looking at. Adopt a policy against sexual harassment in compliance with state law and as necessary to implement the rule, and provide copies of the rule and the adopted procedures and policy to all members of the House and employees of the Speaker's office and the office of the clerk. So you, as the panel, would adopt a policy and the procedures and provide copies of them.
So we would
Rule
send out
90C.
an email to all House, all Senate, saying we've just adopted a new policy or revised the 2018 policy, and here it is.
So I think you would probably send it to the House. I think you, as the chair of the panel, or maybe, from all 5 members,
Yeah.
but would say the House has adopted this, this new policy. You could say the House and the Senate have agreed on this policy,
Yeah.
but because the process is different in the Senate and they
Okay.
actually have to adopt it by a vote of the full Senate.
Okay.
So I think I hesitate to adopt it unless the Senate is going to adopt the
Right.
same thing.
Yeah.
So I think we need to talk
Yeah.
to Senator
Yeah.
Hardy and
Yeah.
say,
Right.
can you please get on your panel and,
Right, so they are scheduling a meeting for next week.
okay, good.
And so I think, which is great, because I think we're in a really good
Okay.
place
Yeah.
with
And if they do it in the middle of the week, we're meeting at the end of the week.
Right, I think they're looking to, I'm not sure they have narrowed down yet which day they're meeting.
But at least, could you send this to them?
Yes, and I
And
think,
then
in fact,
say, yeah, please get on it, because we seem to always be waiting on the Senate.
Oh, I think I saw Senator Hardy and she said we're definitely wanting to, she really wants to move it along.
Representative Bloomley has her hand up.
Hmm?
Representative Bloomley has her
Oh,
hand
I'm
up.
sorry, Representative Bloomley.
That's okay. It's easy to forget. So I just wanted to say that I can't remember if we've discussed this before, but I know that there's a training that is held every year, but there are people who sometimes replace members midstream. And I am wondering if there's anything that we want to say or need to say in our procedures about making sure that all members get this training and that somehow we are keeping track of who hasn't had it by virtue of having not been there at the training because maybe they weren't a sitting member.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And the other sort of related issue to that is nobody's taking attendance at a training, it's not like people are going to check who's in their seat. And I don't know how we deal with that. Maybe we talk to the speaker about this. I don't know. Do you have an idea?
I do.
And
And
I
the
think-
other idea is it was video streamed.
This past time it was, right.
Last time it's video streamed, so maybe like when somebody comes in mid-term or mid-session, maybe we just send the link to the video and say, you need to
That's
watch
great.
this. And I'm sure it's same with the ethics panel and the diversity panel.
Yeah.
That these are required.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are working on ultimately sort of moving the training responsibility over to HR from my office. And so it may look different in the future. But I think so, and so it may also be something that HR can help with, help the speaker's office keep track of who gets it, or that can be part of the new member when a new member comes in.
Yes.
Right, work with Mike
I
Ferron.
think we used to need to attest that we had, do you remember this?
No,
I sort of remembered signing something, that we got a copy of the policy. That was it. We had to sign something that we received a copy of the policy.
I don't remember that.
Do you have any thoughts about that, Tiff? Further thoughts? Are you there?
you may have to repeat your
I don't know
question.
what's happening. She's moving.
Yeah, you may just need to repeat your question. She may not have
Yeah,
heard you.
hey, Representative Bloomley, do you have any other thoughts about that issue? And about how we make sure that everybody is aware of the policy?
I hate to go. I'm sorry. We just have to take a vote in my committee.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So
Thank
I think
That means we don't have a quorum anymore.
No,
so-
but on that point, when the new members came in midterm, they go to HR and have to sign up their
Yes, and they get a lot of information from
So maybe
legislative
that's-
operations. and Yeah,
Okay.
I'm making a note of that. So I'm going to send
Good
the
idea.
policy to the Senate panel, I think, because I'm on the email with them. And then I will mention to talk to HR. And Arlene was not able to make it this morning. She had another meeting that came up.
So I think we need to